Welcome to the Trailside podcast. In this series, I speak to cyclists from all over the world that are involved in the Kona Bikes Ambassador Programme. In this episode, I speak to Alasdair McAlley about all things Kona and retro, including some of the old colour schemes and some controversial frame names. Great, Alasdair. So thanks for giving me some of your time this morning. I suppose we'll start off by just if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of how cycling is involved in your life.
Oh, blimey. Well, thank you for inviting me, first of all. And I'm Alasdair, and so cycling is involved. I mean, cycling is kind of part of my DNA, I guess, even though from that, I mean, not like, I've got a heritage of amazing relatives who are world-class cyclists or anything like that. Just more of, it's just something that was just a huge part of, and always has been a big part of my life, I guess. So, right from, being, as soon as I can kind of walk properly, earliest memories of being on a bike and it's just evolved over time to kind of where we are today, and a garage full of bikes that all happen to be Kona. Big stories in between, but it's just it's a big part of who I am, I guess.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm kind of the same, just cycling for a long time, but I think my brother cycled when he was younger, but we don't come from like a family of racers or a family of mountain bikers or anything. It's just kind of something I loved doing.
Absolutely.
So I have seen though that you have quite the collection of old retro Konas and a couple of very nice titanium bikes as well, if I'm correct.
So I actually don't have any titanium bikes.
Oh, I thought you did. Sorry.
No, I don't. And that's some people have said is an obvious gap in the collection, but titanium bikes were never something I aspired after, even though I really respect them. But they were we're getting detailed already, but because they were like elite bikes, in my view, ridden by pro riders, it was never something I could ever even comprehend I would ever see, let alone ride. So the desire was more on the attainable, but that's obviously changed a bit as age goes on. But I have I guess we're amongst friends. I'm absolutely obsessed with with the particular era of Kona bikes, particularly 1996 to about 1998. So the 97 range, obviously, but around the edges, that's really what I have a healthy obsession. Unhealthy obsession, depends what day of the week it is. But I love Konas really all the way from inception from 88, pretty much. I guess probably up to around about 2000 is like my favorite era. But obviously I'm a big fan of the modern bikes, particularly certainly the last couple of years. I think they've been absolutely incredible. So but Kona in general, obsessed with, I guess.
And what is it about the kind of 96, 97, 98 era bikes that just appeal to you so much more so than any other?
Well, initially they just look amazing. So if we get the aesthetics out of the way, I think they're the peak look that Kona's had. I think certainly this year and the last sort of couple of years, I think they've gone back to more of those colorways and color schemes, but they're just incredible to look at. There's enough stuff online, and I've got some catalogs here that I always look at, and you just look at them, and you've got every color, and just the way that not just the fact they're every color, but the types of colors that are being used, the finishes that are being used, and the combination of the jungle graphics which came in that year, which is sort of evolved now. This is like year 9, year 10 of Kona in existence, and it's like they've really hit their stride in just everything. So the colors look great. The range is amazing. It's got everything you could want for and more. You've got road bikes, hardtails, full suspension. You've got high-end titanium. You've got custom steel, custom aluminium. and all the way through to cruisers as well. So it's an amazing range, which at the time was quite unique. A lot of the other brands didn't really have all of that going on, but Kona does. And there's a lot of innovation going on as well. So particularly that era, if I take the sort of step away out of Kona, you just look at it more broadly. The Atlanta Olympics of '96 was kind of a watershed moment of full mountain biking, with it being in there for the first time. And it's sort of a big line in the sand where the hobby and the sport has developed from the late 70s. It's turned into mass production in the mid 80s through to the early 90s, and then suddenly hits the global stage of a sporting event, even though, of course, we've had a number of World Cups and what have you, but boom, 96, that's when it really is truly global. And then after that, it just explodes into all these different fragments. The North Shore free ride, downhill is already there, but it really starts to splinter off into, I guess, kind of what we have now. You've got these tribes of different types of riders, but it's just at that point before it explodes. You have everything grouped together. And I just think that's quite special, quite a unique moment in history. So that's, I suppose, why I find it fascinating. And then obviously the practical is that, I had my first Kona mountain bike was a 95 Cinder Cone. And so, I'm naturally kind of drawn to around about that era, because that's when I had my first proper Konas and started really getting into them. So, that's why.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, it is. It is. But they're all riders, right? So they're not garage queens. They all get ridden. They're all got patina on them. Obviously, some are a bit more polished than others, but they're not there as showcase museum pieces. They get ridden, and that's because they're great to ride, and they still are. Even though they're a bit sketchy, they're still great to ride, and that's what makes Kona so great.
Yeah, it's definitely around that era. Like I wasn't really into cycling around that time, because I was just I was probably 8, 10 around that time. So like all I knew about biking was just I had a bike and I used to cycle around outside with my friends, and that was about it. But even now, looking back, I know the color schemes were pretty crazy, all right. And then like sometimes I just kind of go down this rabbit hole on YouTube watching all the old videos from the old races, and like there's these colossal events sponsored by like huge brands and like televised on major TV networks and everything. You don't see that nowadays, even though like it's nearly bigger now than it was then. But like you don't seem to get the kind of the mass media coverage when it really exploded, like you were saying.
It's interesting you say that, because although that footage is there, I never saw any of it, and none of my friends did either, because it was all on a Sky or Eurosport. And if you think of the 90s, none of my mates had Sky, or as it was then, satellite TV.
No, we didn't have satellite. No, like 4 or 5 channels on the TV, and that was it.
Absolutely. So it was all happening there. The only media we had was MBUK or MBI or whatever magazine that was there, and of course, that's just a picture in a magazine. So. So yeah, I like you. I love going through that rabbit hole, because I never ever saw them. Only really a few people did, and then you just see how insane it was that folks are going down kamikaze runs and Cap Run and God knows what on hardtail. 60 mil travel in front.
If any travel at all.
If any travel at all, or my favourite, going downhill on a Toyota disc drive. I mean, that's just like, what on earth were you thinking? But that was the thing, right? So
those are some crazy looking wheels. Those disc drive wheels. They
sound great thow. They sound great. They're like these noise. Yeah, it's really cool. But then probably snap as the elastic breaks.
Yeah, that was definitely kind of a golden era of mountain biking before it just decided to fade away, and then kind of had a resurgence again. But I don't know if I'll ever have that kind of mass media coverage. But I didn't see any of that. Like I never would have seen any of it on TV, even if I was big into cycling and mountain biking at that age and knew all about it. No, we didn't have the TV channels here. And then like I it's hard to think even how anybody knew what was going on especially here in Ireland, because like it would have been such a small community, but we didn't have any, you know, I suppose if you go down to the local news agents, the only thing you're going to find are the UK magazines.
Yeah.
When they were all kind of at their peak as well. So like, I honestly, I don't know how anybody in Ireland managed to organise anything, but there was, you know, there was cross country races and things like that going on, but I suppose it was all just word of mouth.
Yeah, cliques and groups and word of mouth. But that's how the sport started. You know, that's how the hobby started. It wasn't, you know, there was no press around. It was a bunch of crazy hippies who were road cyclists who got bored over the winter and thought, okay, what can we do? It's a bit more fun than, you know, another 80k of riding on tarmac. Well, let's get these old cruisers and see how fast we can go down Mount Tam, and that was it. So, you know, and you know that was like that for a good number of years before, you know, the I'd say the press. I mean, they kind of created their own press through you know, the magazines they were making, but you know, it took a good couple of years before you know, it spread. But there were all these little groups that were doing the same thing. So yeah, it's the same way with you guys. That's what happened there, Gail. By the sound of it, it was just, this looks cool. Let's do it, and let's find other people who think it might be cool to do it.
I think I was kind of doing that as well when I was younger. Like, I had no idea that there was mountain bike races or anything like that going on. And I just like, oh, that hill looks like it's going to be fun to cycle down. Or I bet you I could cycle down those stairs. Or, you know, just crazy things on my bike and just trashing them and breaking. And like, and I only ever had kind of cheap, very, very entry level kids bikes, you know, so that I put them through an awful lot of punishment. There wasn't a straight wheel to be found, or a set of brake pads that weren't already worn down, or, you know, the golden days when you're just all you wanted to do was go cycling. You didn't care about anything else.
Yeah, that was it. That's why I guess it's always been so important to me, because it was the same, similar in that, you know, I'd get an ordnance survey map. I just go, right, where do I want to explore today? You know, there's these footpaths and bridleways or whatever. Right, well, let's figure out where I'm going to go, and then I get on my bike and get lost. But when you found that sweet bit of, you know, relative speaking, you're a kid, and you're like, oh, this is a sweet bit of single track. You know, look at it today, be like, well, that's rubbish. But that wasn't the point. It was the fear of, no, not the fear, the joy of exploring and also sort of getting lost and then finding your way home, but doing it under your own steam. That to me was hugely appealing. And yeah, like you know, just go off and do it. It's and I love that. Still, you know, even today, try and find somewhere new to go you haven't been to before. It's all part of the fun.
Yeah, there's definitely sometimes if I feel like I want to go off on a long cycle on the gravel bike or find something new, like I literally just be there kind of trawling over Google Maps, trying to link up all these back roads and country lanes and stuff, trying to avoid the main roads and work my way around in a big loop and without having to go near any main road at all. Or it's like, I'm looking at these little satellite pictures, like, I wonder if that stream is as narrow as it looks. And it was like, would I be able to jump across that with the bike on my shoulder so I don't need to go near the main road and the dual carriageway or anything like that? And
that's it.
But yeah, those sometimes, it's even more fun to try and plan out a route than actually go and do the route. But then everything goes wrong when you go for a cycle, and you know, nothing works out like you thought it was going to. But at the end of the day, you still had an awesome adventure.
That's it.
So, like, what kind of cycling are you mainly focused on? Like, I know I've seen a couple of Instagram posts of mountain bikes, even you, hey, but like, you know, what was it always kind of off-road and mountain biking that you've been into?
I guess that's where the passion is the most. In terms of mileage, road biking is what I do the most. Weather-wise, that has a big part to play, I think. But yeah, passion was probably more on the mountain biking. But you know, when I say that, I think as a kid, you know, the Tour de France was a sort of a regular annual thing. You know, it was a big part of my dad sort of growing up, and I think he instilled into me at least of, you know, what's sitting down and watching the highlights every day. And you know, certainly the late 80s and then sort of the early 90s, you know, definitely not the best for the sport health wise, but in terms of racing, you know, iconic moments, you know, Le Mans and Fignon will live long in the memory. You know, you see the clip of Phil going crazy about what's happening when I watched it as well live. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? It's incredible. He's going to win. So yeah. But yeah, mountain biking was definitely the more of a means of adventure. So that's, I suppose, where I have more of the drive and the passion towards. But I think as I've got older, I've loved more being on the road bike and just the joy of putting in mile after mile. There's something I really enjoy, just the grind of it, which I don't think appeals to many people. But I don't necessarily like too much the sort of stereotypical roadie culture. I'm quite happy just to, I don't dress up like a roadie. I'll probably got all my mountain bike gear and I'll just get on a road bike and I'll go and do some miles. But so I don't think I'll be welcomed, which is fine with me. But all the bikes are mountain bikes apart from 2 road bikes. So that says everything, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Like I really like the mountain biking and kind of getting into the woods and getting away from everything and just having, wrestling my bike around some of the trails. But then as you said, like it's not that I'm into the road cycling culture. Like, and if you are, fair enough. If you want to go as fast as you can for as far as you can, cool. But I prefer, like, as you said, the grind. Like, and sometimes if you want to go for like just a really long cycle, but I'd be there on like my gravel bike with my, I'd have a backpack on for the water and I'd have like my mountain bike gear on and I'd just be tipping along on kind of the hard shoulder, not pushing it at 35 kilometers an hour, but just going at a comfortable pace and just, go off and do 70, 80 kilometers or whatever, 50 miles, whatever that is. And, and just kind of get back a bit happy with myself that, you got to go spend time. But I do, like, I when I'm going off on stuff like that, I'll try to avoid the main roads as I can, which is the great kind of plus side of having the gravel bike. So it's a bit more robust. And there's no shortage of bad country and bog and roads and farm roads and everything that you can just meander down and they all kind of link up with each other somewhere. But definitely, like, you could go out and just never see a car. And I think that's when you're saying just go off and all you want to do is just kind of grind out some miles. That's what I'd be doing. But I'd prefer to kind of stay away from the main road. Just be nice and quiet and be nothing but me and the noise of the wind, the noise of the tires on the gravel, and
sounds like heaven.
Yeah.
What are we talking here for? Let's go off.
Yeah. I don't do it nearly as much as I'd want to, or as I know I should. But definitely that's kind of what I really enjoy about cycling is just kind of escaping from everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I would totally relate. So I was commuting into London before we moved down here in the southwest of the UK, and sort of pre-COVID as well. So I'd go into the office every day from southeast London. Took me about 10 miles backwards and forwards. Absolutely insane traffic, as you would imagine. But there was something actually I really enjoyed about it, and not in a sort of suicidal way, but just the repetitiveness of, I knew I'd have 20 miles a day, 5 days a week, which obviously then really helps when it gets to weekends and I'm not on the road bike, I'm on the mountain bike. So adjusting, coming down here 18 months ago, the joy of sort of reconnecting with that, what you've just said, of just being out on your own with hardly anyone around, but being able to put mile after mile is just great, and reminds me of sort of being a kid again, where I was fortunate to sort of grow up in the countryside as well, and having just those hours and hours of just being out doing nothing but just exploring or cycling. So to kind of reconnect to that, I'm very grateful for. And although initially I missed the commute because I missed the structure and the regularity of getting those miles in a set way, and it was really good for my mental health.
You just know that every day you're going to have that bit of time on the bike.
Exactly, and it was a good decompress after work and a good decompress sort of just before to kind of brace you for it. But to replace it, doing it here and having longer rides, I mean, I wouldn't swap that for anything now. So I completely relate to the whole, just being on yourself and enjoying it. It's lovely.
And have you ever got into the competitive side of cycling, or is it purely just enjoyment and adventures that you prefer to do?
Yeah, enjoyment and adventures. The competitive side.
Or even on the local scene, like not kind of professional
No.
competitive side, but even just going to like local cross country races or anything like that, or
No, it was never something I was interested in as a kid, mainly because I wasn't good enough and I didn't want to put myself through it. And as a kid, I was never ever, let's be real. You could enter it, but I never wanted to come last, and I would come last. I did it once, and I came last, and it was just like, nope, that's not for me. So I love watching it or sort of being around the buzz of it, and certainly now, sort of today, I would say very loosely, I enter Mountain Mayhem with some sort of buddies as well, and we do that very casually, but not casually to the point of going backwards. We want to be competitive in that we won't come last, and we don't. But we certainly don't do it for wanting to come first, and that's really I think that's about as competitive as I will get on a on a mountain bike or a road bike for that matter. I've done some like charity events and things like that, but again, that's not competitive. That's not something I'm really interested in.
Yeah, I know. I do go to, like, there's a lot of, when I first started cycling, or when I refound cycling kind of as a young adult, I was big into downhill, but like I never thought I was going to win. I was always somewhere mid-pack, and I was kind of happy enough with that. Like for me, it was really just getting away for the weekend to go to another part of the country and have an uplift for the weekend, and just camp out in a field and have a bit of fun. And even now, like I don't go near a downhill bike at all anymore. I'm more interested in the bit of the cross country side, on technical trails. So it's still kind of challenging, but at the same time, I have no fear of tumbling down the side of a mountain. But I go to the local cross country races when I can, and it's more kind of to support the scene. But like, every year I seem to come away with a medal or a trophy, but that's literally just because like the cycling scene is so small here. Like all I have to do, if I just show up to 5 races, my string of third place out of 4 people will get me enough points to have like a second place at the end of the league. So yeah, like I do have a few little trophies and medals and stuff.
That's cool.
That's pretty much just because I showed up to every race and not because I won any of them.
You shouldn't have said that. You've spoiled it now. You could have built this up into I'm bronze medalist. That's cool though. That's really cool. It's cool you do that.
And like the worst part of it is there's the different categories. Like, so you'd have the elite and you have the expert, and then you'd have sport, and then you'd have novice. And like I would always be kind of hovering around the sport, and next thing you know, for the one season, like you've won overall in sport, so now we have to move you up into the expert men's, and next thing you know, like the guys who are winning the sport races are lapping me while I'm trying to race the experts and do an extra 2 laps. And I'm like, why are you I like, look at my results. I came third 5 times, so I kind of won overall. I am not supposed to be racing against the experts. Definitely not.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's about as competitive as I get with it. But
that's cool though.
It's really I still enjoy kind of the buzz of the day, as you said, like you're kind of showing up to the race and seeing everything that's going on, and as long as it's not raining from the heavens, as it's usually doing here in Ireland, if you get a nice day for it. But yeah, that's about as competitive as I get.
Nice.
So I see you've been part of the Kona ambassador program now as well, as you were kind of taken on. Is this your first year, or have you been part of it in the past?
No, I've been lucky enough to been doing it for a couple of years now, and first of all, as we say that, obviously massive thank you for Kona, Lacey and the team for putting that all together. Eternally grateful for the opportunities that gives. I think we should say that definitely. So I think this is about my third year maybe, and it's been tremendous fun. Obviously, it was really difficult with COVID that we couldn't really do much other than just do virtual things. I'm not a YouTuber or anything like that, so videos and things like that are kind of way out of my experience. So my sort of contributions are written stories or written observations, and certainly on the social media side, bite-sized pieces of kind of interesting things that are happening, or things in my collection, or related to what we've been talking about. So to be able to sort of share that through that program is really invigorating, I guess, because there is a big community of what you would call retro bikes or retro biking, and there's lots of amazingly far more insightful or intelligent or knowledgeable people than me. So I sometimes feel like a bit of an imposter, but it's great to kind of share that knowledge, collective knowledge across that network about the history of Kona, which I think they do an amazing job of anyway. And I think that's one of the unique USPs of Kona, is that they don't ignore their mistakes. They don't ignore the things that weren't really well. They don't ignore their past. A lot of the big brands, which we shall not talk about. Yeah, it's just always about even the last year's model is rubbish. It's always about what's coming down, what's new. Now, for me, that's very soulless. Kona has a huge soul because it embraces everything they've ever done, and so being able to share that with like-minded people is super cool, and I hope in some way useful for folks who are new to Kona or just curious about what on earth is that weird looking contraption, and why was it like that, why did it turn out like that, why didn't it last, or how did it evolve, and I love all that kind of stuff. So it's super cool being part of that and sort of putting in my sixpence on that every now and then.
Yeah, like I think as I've said to a few other people, the great thing about Kona, especially with the ambassador program, is they're looking for people that are just interesting and have a passion for cycling, rather than who can do the biggest jumps and who can shred the fastest down a hill, or who can do the biggest and the best and the fastest and things like that. But where they're a little bit more interested in like people who have an interesting story, or who kind of support the community, or have an interesting story to tell, and I think that's like, I kind of came across Kona from working in the bike shop, and the shop I was working in, we were a Kona dealer, and just kind of through that I just really liked the way sometimes they were kind of a little bit ahead of the curve on some of the stuff, and then even though even with the fat bike stuff, fat bikes exploded. And then they fizzled off, but Kona still have that kind of core fan base of guys, and they're still selling the fat bikes, and they didn't just dump them off their line like a lot of other kind of bigger brands did, and stuff like that. And even as you said, they can joke about stuff, like some of the names of their bikes in the past, or some of their advertising and the videos and stuff have just been crazy, like the Humu Humu,
Humu Nuka Nuka Pow Pow.
Yeah, I can't say that. like I remember coming across it, like the whole joke was like they needed the second crossbar in the frame to fit the name of the bike along the time. And like even what was the other bike a few years ago? I think it was the Tanuki. It was like this weird, like a little drunk Japanese badger with huge testicles.
Yeah, who's actually human. They're human, but they're disguised as this creature. Yeah. So it's super funny.
And he's drunk and he goes around and gives people gold, and some weird story like that. Things like that. Or I think what I heard before was the Hanzo was some kind of a drunken monkey or something like that as well. All these kind of weird little jokes and stuff like that. And I've heard loads of stories, because the owner of the bike shop I used to work at was kind of, was friends along with business partners of the original owners of Kona. So he had like some of the inside scoop and stories of some of the crazy stuff that used to go on back in the days. Like, and I've heard some pretty wild things, and it's just, it's just a bunch of guys that are really just kind of messers. And threw together a bike company, and then it kind of exploded and went from there, which is kind of what I know there's a lot of other bike companies out there kind of doing the same thing, but they're not just a giant soulless corporation, which is great.
Yeah, the names are amazing. I mean, there's so many stories about those names. I mean, they got them into a lot of trouble as well. I mean, there were the I don't know if we can talk about it, but you can bleep it out. The sex bikes, in '95 and '96, and they had to change their names because quite rightly, it's completely inappropriate.
Yeah.
But the tires, scratch and sniff, break and enter. There's just so many funny moments. My favourite one I heard this year was the unit, and why it's called the unit.
Oh, I don't know why it's called the unit. No, I've never.
All right. So again, hopefully I'll tell this correctly, and if not, they can someone can post edit it. But my understanding is it's called the unit as a poke at Specialized, because back in the day, whenever they were at trade fairs or all those sort of world events that we now take for granted, Specialized would sort of come up to Kona and go, so how many units have you sold? Because they never talked about a bike was not a bike, it was a unit.
Yeah.
And so they created the unit so that they could turn around to Specialized and say, oh yeah, we've sold one unit, or at least one unit.
At least one unit.
so that's why they called it that.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
So, allegedly, yeah. Let's make sure we've got a nice big caveat before the start of this podcast. This may not be factually true, but yeah, that's one of my recent favourites. Yeah.
I haven't heard that story before. I like that one. That's a good one. Yeah, I like how they'll go and they'll design a bike and name a bike and market a bike purely just to poke fun at something or somebody, and I think that's really great.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I don't know what else to ask you now. I think you've covered pretty much most of it, with the retro bikes and how you got into cycling and, kind of the love and joy of the way Kona just kind of take the mick out of everything and themselves. Yeah, unless there's anything else you feel like you want to add, or...
Well, it's up to you. I mean, I could talk about anything from that era, I guess. It's whatever's interesting, I guess. I mean, some of the bikes have got a quite unusual, and they all have a kind of interesting story behind them. But yeah, it's kind of up to you, I guess.
I don't know. Like, what's kind of the most bizarre story that you have? Like, so have you had all of your bikes from you, or have you kind of got an itch and saw a picture and then decided to go hunting for one and see what you could find, and then have you gotten any bikes that were pulled out of a hedge behind a shed that you had to rebuild up from scratch again and restore?
No, that's a good question. So all of the bikes, sadly, I've not owned from new. I'd love to say that I've still got my Cinder Cone, but sadly that broke after many years of service. And so, yeah, the fleet I've collected pretty much since, I'd say, 2010.
Okay.
And the last bike, which was the 97 Kapoo, came sort of during COVID. So at the moment, I have one project at the moment, which could talk about in a sec, I guess. But they've collected over a number of years, and it was through the power of the internet, and thanks to eventually sort of rekindling. So let's take a step back. So getting back into Kona, I guess, sort of happened around about 2007, 2008. At that time, I just sort of started to get back into cycling as a means of transport and getting fit again. And of course, I dug out my Kona that I'd still had dusty in the back of the garage and got that going again. And just by just curiosity, I got a copy of MBUK at that point, and they happened to be an issue where they were doing a spotlight on Retro Bike, which is a site if no one's familiar with, they had showcased some old bikes from back in the day. And I thought, I'll go and have a look on Retro Bike, and this is 2008. And suddenly found this huge world of, oh my God, all this classic stuff, like classic cars, or indeed like any classic or retro scene of any kind. This incredible wealth of information. It just sort of restoked the fire of Kona. And through that, and then, building up relationships and friends along the way, managed to sort of start to acquire bikes that I'd basically lusted after back in the day.
Yeah.
Start with the explosive, and then sort of getting into other bikes that were interested, like the Mano Mano, and then ultimately the hot. The hot was what I'd always wanted to get. That was the custom best steel frame you could get, and so getting one of those was a huge moment, and purely by chance. So sadly, none of them have been found in the back of a hedge because thankfully people are a bit too smart when it comes to, I think people know what they've got, thankfully. But a couple of them, I got, some decent deals with. The most, I guess, interesting one was the project at the moment, which is the Tommy Missa replica from 96, 97. So that was like Kona's first proper downhill bike, except it's not a Kona, it's a Turner. It's a Turner frame, which they bought about 50 of from Turner at the time, and badged as a Kona. Tommy was riding this. Others were riding it as well. It was like the first proper 4-bar downhill bike, and it absolutely ruled for a short period of time. And so the guy was selling it during COVID. It'd been sitting in his loft just as a frame. And he literally lived 3 miles from me up the road. I couldn't believe one of 50 worldwide was sitting in a loft 3 miles up the road. And it wasn't even a bike I was kind of interested in, but it was just like, I can't ignore that. That's got to come with me. That's got to come with me. And so I've been learning a lot more about that since the last sort of 2 or 3 years. And it's still a project because getting parts for it is unbelievably difficult, because
especially if you want to go kind of as original as you can.
Absolutely, because everyone broke them. Everyone broke them, and everyone broke the parts on them because they were getting more and more crazy with the riding they were doing. So I have the frame, I have the forks, I've got like the cockpit, but wheels are my Achilles heel at the moment. Trying to get either first gen D-Maxes or XTR hubs on D521 Mavic rims, but it has to be a bolt through on the front, first generation bolt through. It can't be modern day. It's so hard to get them at a price which doesn't mean I have to remortgage the house.
100 mil hubs are few and far between these days, unless you're going for something on a road bike.
Absolutely. I can't go modern on that. That would be sacrilege, and probably wouldn't fit anyway. So that's like the last project I will have, I think, for some time. You mentioned titanium bikes, and I don't have any. And I think there's only one I would consider, and sadly Kona's not willing to sell it, funnily enough, which is Roland Green's Rasta Flames Hey from 97, which they have over in HQ in Bellingham, which has featured in a couple of photo shoots over the years, and that's just like the most beautiful frame I've ever seen. And so unless one of those comes up for sale, which isn't going to happen, I'm quite happy to buy my time, and if I ever get over there, just distract everyone in the team, just run off with it, just grab it and run off. So it's such a beautiful bike that. So I was very blessed to then find the nearest thing I could get to it, which was a Rasta Flames explosive, which was again is another long story if you're interested in.
I know, like I don't have any titanium bikes, but I would try to love and get my hands on one someday. Now I did have I had a steel Sutra LTD for a while that I was using kind of a commuter and a gravel bike, and I loved that one, and then upgraded to the Libre. And as much as I love the Libre and as a fantastic bike as it is, I really do miss the steel frame. How it was heavier than the Libre, but it was just so comfortable. You could go on the ride for so long, and it's just the most comfortable bike ever.
Absolutely.
And I would love to try and get my hands someday on a titanium bike that I could try and build up. Now, a friend of mine actually has a titanium Humu sitting there frame doing nothing, and I think it'd be too small for me, but like he doesn't want, he knows he's never going to do anything with it, but he doesn't want to get rid of it because of what it is. And I don't know, maybe someday if I have an extra few quid, I was like, give it to me. I want it.
Yeah.
Even though I have nothing, I have no fork for it, I have no handlebars for it, I have no wheels for it, I have nothing that I could build up for it. But even if I could just get my hands on the frame and then be like, yeah, that's kind of the next project. I mean, like I have a process over there that I need to rebuild the wheels for, and I have a couple of bits and pieces sitting there that I know I need to get around to doing at some point. Or what I would love to try and get my hands on is one of the old Kona BMXs, which...
Oh, right, yeah. The doo-doo? Was it the doo-doo they had?
I can't remember. There's a couple of the different ones, yeah. But
one moment I can find it. I've got it. brought my box down.
Oh, you have all your
with
the brochures and trade books,
the old stuff. Yeah, so that was about 2000. They started doing those.
Like you can still find the old Kona website archives online.
Yes,
and there's a few years they had some BMXs there, and like I went to even try and I just had an itch one day and start scouring the internet to see if there's any and you'll find some really old ads for them for sale on like Pink Bike from like 10, 11 years ago and stuff, but there doesn't seem to be anything to be found nowadays.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to kill me now. We can edit this out, right? There's one, I've got it. It's got, because Scott Beaumont, Boom Boom, did so much of the press shots, and he's like in all the catalogues, and I can see it now on the back of the 2000. There's the brochure in 2000. The first part of it is one direction, and the second part is another direction, so you kind of have to flip it around to read it. It's
it's the second half of it is backwards, so it's upside down.
Yeah, and on the back it's him on one of them. I'm absolutely sure of it. So yeah, it's going to kill me. Anyway, I can maybe find it post meeting.
Stick a picture up on Instagram and tag me in it so I'll find it.
There we go.
And a giant Kona sticker as well.
There we are. So yeah, there we go. There he is.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was so cool. Was it the Cuckoo and the Mama? That was the first year that they had them. So there we go.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever be able to get my hands on one, but just one of the days, for whatever reason, I just had an itch. It's like, I wonder, can I find a Kona BMX somewhere for sale? And there was a few of them old ads listed online for sale in the UK, and a couple of them on Pink Bike, but that was it. There was no joy to be had.
Yeah, super, super cool. I remember I think I saw a Cuckoo not that long ago. So they do come up. That yeah, titanium's cool. I was lucky enough to actually just put my leg over a couple for the first time earlier this year with the Kona store reopening in Chertsey. So they'd moved just a couple of blocks along from the fire station, but they'd done that during COVID. And so they hadn't actually had a proper store opening, even though they'd been open for a while. It was really nice. They invited me up there, and I brought a couple of the fleet there, and some other folks who I chatted with but never met. They came over, including Shandor with his incredible 92 titanium Hey, which I think Kona did a couple of spotlights on, and then was in
that's probably the one I was thinking of. Maybe I thought you owned that one. I think that was even featured on GMBN, did a video comparing the old Hey to the new Hey and stuff.
Yes, so there's a nice little bit of symmetry on that, because first of all, I managed to put my leg over that bike, which is just unbelievable. So if people haven't seen it, go and we'll put the link or something in it, because it's not just the frame, the forks, the handlebar, the stem, and the seat posts are also titanium, all Kona branded.
Yeah.
And it's. I mean, they were so expensive. I mean, as I said to a couple of folks, the forks are probably worth more than the frame. They're so rare.
Yeah.
And because the steerer is just a piece of titanium that they drilled a hole in, and can you imagine how expensive that was?
So it's not even a hollow tube, it was like a solid bar that they drilled a hole down through the middle of it.
Absolutely nuts. And yeah, so to see all of that titanium kit on the frame, I mean, that was like that's like rocking horse poo rare. So to be able to see it and then just to do a little spin around the block on it, it was super rigid. It was much more rigid than I thought it would be. Because then another friend had a 97, 98 King Kahuna Hey, and that was much more flexible, which was interesting because it should be more rigid because of the extra gusseting. But I think it's just because of the tubing's changed, and we'll get too technical, but it was super cool. But that bike that was featured in the GMBN Hey, the actual modern one, is the one that I've now got.
Oh wow!
So they've
so you can say your bike was ridden by Doddy from GMBN or whoever it was.
It was Neil.
Oh,
yeah.
was it? Okay.
So I make a joke because it had a couple of scratches on it. So I was like, yeah. But no, obviously, again, thankful for Kona for supporting me and supporting us on that journey. But yeah, that was that bike. So I couldn't believe it when they handed it over and said, no, that's the that's yours. I was like, what? So I was completely shocked that, and and that was the first. This year's been the first time I've ever ridden anything more modern than 1998 and a mountain bike. So I've had a baptism of fire of getting used to all this modern fangled stuff that I've been reading about.
Yeah,
so,
anyway. That's the same bike I have. I've got the same hey you have, and I think it's the first time I've ridden a full suspension bike since riding downhill, in my early 20s, and I'm 34 now, and like it was just definitely a learning curve, because the one thing I found myself always doing is looking at my back wheel, because I kept thinking I had a puncture.
Right.
Because I'm just not used to the bike being squishy, because I was always riding hardtails. And I had fat bike and I had Hanzo and I had, just always hardtails and stuff, like, and it was a long time since I rode a full sus, so it was definitely a learning curve. But it's crazy how, even though it's kind of aimed a little bit more like a cross country bike, but a bit more than a race cross country bike, it's kind of a very capable, like, and I can throw it down anything, and it's but at the same time it pedals up really easily, like it's a crazy bike. Like I can't believe I have something like that, but it'll be a long time since before I get my hands on anything else new, I think. But
So what did you think? So was it the suspension that was the biggest difference? What when you got on it and you rode it, what's been the most striking difference from before?
Well, I had it was a big Hanzo CR, and I would run that with both 650 wheels, the 27 plus or the 29ers, depending on kind of what trails I was on. But the thing about that one is, like, I would ride it on the cross country trails, and it's kind of more like a aggressive trail hardtail. So like, you're sitting really far back, and it's a really short back end and a really long front end, and like, you can point it down anything, but as soon as you start going to climb anything, you'd nearly be wrestling the front wheel to stop wheeling if you're going up anything steep. And then when I moved on to the full sus, like, it's the crazy thing for me was that I feel like I was higher up. Like, so if I'm going around any tight, twisty turns, I always feel like I was about to tip over, like I was up high on something. But at the same time, when I was pedaling up the fire road, and I'd be thinking, like, as it's not bouncing up and down, but you'd feel that tiny little bit of give in the back wheel, and then you realize, like, I keep looking at my back tire thinking, is my back tire too soft? What's all this extra bounce? But then as soon as you go to point it down and you go cycling over rough stuff, and it was crazy, because I didn't have the back wheel kicking around and bouncing over the roots and rocks, so it was kind of just after so many years of being so used to a hardtail, it was a bit of a learning curve to get used to the bike, because I was convinced there was constantly something broke or something wrong with it, because it's not what I was used to. But I got the hang of it, and it's once I kind of started to get used to going over the rough stuff, I realized, no, that's what it's supposed to feel like. I'm not supposed to be getting bounced around the place. I'm not supposed to, my legs aren't supposed to be screaming at me when I get to the bottom of a hill.
Yeah, well, imagine that times 100, because I've gone from 26-inch wheels to 29. I've gone from mostly hardtail. The only Mano had 60 mil real travel to now 130 or whatever it is, 120 dropper posts. Great big bars, but the biggest is the geometry. There's the fact it's huge. I mean, the thing is massive. It's so long.
Yeah.
So as you say, the rolling for me has been the biggest difference, because I was convinced it was going to be fairly not cumbersome and slow, but I thought, this thing's big.
It'd be hard to kind of throw around and twist around stuff. But
2.4 wide tires. This is going to be horrible climbing, and that for me has been the biggest surprise, as you said as well. The climbing on it is insane, especially if I put it on a lockout. If I've got something that's not too rough, I can get up that. I remember the first couple of times I rode it, I was out of breath at the top, and I was like, why am I out of breath? It's because you've been just going really quick, and you've been like that was actually quite easy to get up there, but I've still got a tremendous amount of learning to do on it. The thing I've struggled with the most is actually the steering, because I'm so used to 500 or 565 mil
narrow bars and a long stem.
Yeah, and suddenly I've got this huge bar. So I'm still doing this because that's what I'm used to. But if I do that on a modern bike, I'm over in the hedge. So so I'm still struggling with that, particularly on the more technical climbing. I literally have to tell myself stop stop moving so much, because as soon as you do that, then you lose your momentum, and I'm stopped when I know I can get up that climb, or I know I could, but I kind of do it in for myself. So still a tremendous amount of learning. So I agree with you. It's like this bike will be I'm quite happy with for the next 20 years, because I've still got to get better on it. And,
as long as I can make the carbon last. Yep.
Yes.
It's gonna last me. And I'm not an overly aggressive rider, and I'm not bringing it down anything too crazy. So the bike is going to last me a long time, I hope.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And it looks great. I mean, that colour and that sparkle that it's got that you don't really see in the
pictures
catalogue.
Do not do it justice. Because I was looking at it, it's like, that's the that's the bike I want. If I can get my hands on my last kind of real high end bike that I'd be able to get, and that'll be for years and years before I'd be able to get anything else. So it's like I want to go all out, and I was thinking I'm not gone on the colour, but I like it, So, but then it was kind of like a dark mustardy yellow in the pictures, but then when you actually see it in the fresh, and it's really bright, and it's got a bit of sparkle in the paint, and it really is amazing looking.
It really is, and even the non-CR version, which is in that sort of what sort of colour would it? Sort of a bit aubergine, a light aubergine-y colour. That's got the same sparkle. The guys at the shop had it, and that looked equally amazing. The photo doesn't quite do it justice, just how it pops. They look really, really great. So, except top and tailing what we've been saying, I think that's why you look at the 22 colours. I'm sure 23 as well. We're starting to see. Again, they haven't lost that sort of playfulness with the colours. It's not what you see a lot of those blacks and reds and the same old could be anything type bike. You see a Kona and it does look different, not just the geometry, but just just how it's coloured. They are still got a very really unique colour palette. I think I'm trying to remember the one they posted this week. I think it was one of the road bikes, and it's almost identical to the 94 Explosive, which is this wonderful deep olive green metallic, but it's metallic. It's absolutely beautiful. You try and find another mass-produced bike that looks like that. I mean, you won't. Nobody's using that colour, and it proper good. So. But maybe we're a bit biased, but no, I think they look great.
No, I definitely do like the colours, absolutely, and the colour schemes and what they decide to go with. And I think it was 2017, maybe around that time, when they started to go with some matte colours. And while they looked nice, I don't think they were kind of as durable because they didn't have that clear coat or the gloss and stuff. But then when they started coming back with the shinier and more sparkly colours and kind of bolder, brighter stuff, I was like, they're looking really good again.
Yeah. My wife has a Coco, which is an amazing bike as well. She has, I think it's the 2017 one, which is that deep purple metallic with the gold bronze decals. It's just, I mean, Prince could ride it. It's honestly, it's just beautiful. It's proper Prince purple. Even this year's model looks great as well. And so, you can pretty much pick any of them. It's going to look good. I think Jake the Snake gravel bike from this year, that is fantastic. The colour fades on that.
The Jakes have always been. This is one thing that they've always kind of. I love the colours of the Jakes. The cyclocross bikes. They've always been. They've always been a little bit different than the rest of the range. Or they've kind of have the 2-tone or 3-tone colours with the kind of like the solid break between the colours sometimes. And they've always picked the right colours for them, and I think they always just look crazy.
Yeah, I wonder how much input he has. Maybe you can tell us, but I'm sure. You kind of own the company. You can have what colour you want on your bike that's named after you. So, I like to think he had some input on it anyway.
Okay, well, I think we're coming up on an hour now, so I suppose we better call it. Cool. I'll let you be on your way.
It was lovely talking with you. Thank you very much for having me on, and looking forward to seeing who else you talk with. Have you got many lined up, or?
Too many, nearly.
Okay.
I've had a great, just being on the Kona Ambassador program, that was the first kind of point of call. I just reach out to everybody else that's on the program, and loads of them have got back to me, and they've all kind of booked in days. Like I've 2 yesterday, I have another one this afternoon, and I've some more next week, and nearly 2 a day. So even if I release 1 episode a week, I think I've got 5 months worth of podcasts.
Amazing
to go through. Yeah, so
that's brilliant.
Yeah, so it's it's brilliant. I've had a great response from everybody that, you know, looking to get on, which is another great thing about kind of the Kona and the people they bring on, is just really supportive of everybody else, and anything anybody wants to do, they kind of like, yeah, sounds awesome, I'll help you.
Good stuff. Well, if you need anything else from me, or you want to chat about anything else, I'm always available. I can talk about bikes all day long. So
awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks so much for giving me your time this morning.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. Speak to you soon.
You too.